So you're making more money than your parents did at your age, but somehow you can't afford the life they had. You've got a college degree they didn't need, you're working harder than they ever did, and yet buying a house, starting a family, retiring comfortably, all of that feels completely out of reach. And here's the thing, you're not crazy, you're not bad with money. Something fundamentally broke in 2008, and most people have no idea just how badly the middle class got destroyed in the aftermath. My name is Thomas, and I spend way too much time thinking about what actually happened to economic mobility in America and why an entire generation feels financially stuck. If you're someone who's doing everything right, working full-time, trying to save, maybe even investing a little, but you still feel like you're barely keeping your head above water while watching other people get wealthy, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Look, we need to talk about what actually happened after 2008, because the story you've been told is incomplete at best and a complete lie at worst. Here's what most people don't realize. The 2008 financial crisis didn't just cause a recession, it fundamentally restructured who gets to build wealth in America. And I'm going to show you the exact mechanisms that made this happen, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The numbers nobody talks about. Let me give you some statistics that should make you angry. In 2007, right before the crash, the median net worth of a middle-class family in America was about $152,000. By 2010, it had dropped to $98,000. That's a 35% decline in wealth. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but the economy recovered, right? Here's where it gets really interesting. By 2022, the median net worth of the top 20% of households had fully recovered and actually exceeded their pre-crisis wealth by 23%. Meanwhile, the middle class, well, they recovered to about $141,000, still below where they were in 2007. 15 years later, and the middle class still hasn't fully recovered. But the bottom 50% of Americans? Their net worth went from an average of about $12,000 before the crisis to negative. That's right, negative net worth, more debt than assets. Now here's the thing that nobody wants to admit. This wasn't an accident. The way we recovered from 2008 was specifically designed to benefit people who already had assets, and it absolutely destroyed everyone else. The Federal Reserve's wealth transfer machine. Let me explain the mechanism, because this is where the math gets wild. After 2008, the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates to basically zero and started buying assets through quantitative easing. They pumped trillions of dollars into the financial system. The stated goal was to stimulate the economy, but here's what actually happened. If you owned assets in 2008, stocks, real estate, bonds, the Fed's actions inflated the value of everything you owned. Let's say you had $500,000 in a stock portfolio in 2008. That same portfolio, if you just held it, would be worth about $2.5 million today. You quintupled your money by literally doing nothing. But if you didn't own assets, if you were living paycheck to paycheck, maybe renting, maybe just starting your career, you got zero benefit from this recovery. Actually worse than zero, because now all those assets you were trying to buy became dramatically more expensive. Look at housing. The median home price in 2008 was about $198,000. Today, over $430,000. That's a 117% increase. Meanwhile, median household income went from about $52,000 to $75,000, a 44% increase. Do the math with me here. Housing prices more than doubled. Income increased by less than half. You now need to spend a dramatically higher percentage of your income just to buy the same house your parents could afford on a single income. This is where it gets really interesting and infuriating. The asset ownership divide. Here's what most people don't realize. In 2007, about 65% of middle-class families owned their homes. By 2016, that had dropped to 59%. Now you might be thinking, okay, so some people lost their homes in the foreclosure crisis. That makes sense. But here's the thing. Those homes didn't disappear. They got bought up, often by institutional investors, private equity firms, and wealthy individuals who had cash or access to cheap credit during the crisis. Let me give you a specific example. In 2012, Blackstone, one of the world's largest private equity firms, started buying up foreclosed homes by the thousands. They spent $10 billion buying roughly 50,000 homes, specifically in areas where middle-class families had been foreclosed on. They paid an average of about $200,000 per home. Today, those same homes are worth about $400,000 each. Blackstone turned their $10 billion into $20 billion. And now they're renting those homes back to the same families who used to own them, or to the kids of those families who can't afford to buy. See the transfer? Middle-class families lost their homes, wealthy investors bought them cheap, those homes doubled in value, and now the middle class pays rent to the investors who bought their parents' houses. This happened millions of times across America. The psychology of being priced out. Now here's where the psychology gets really dark. When you're constantly being priced out of assets, you develop what I call financial learned helplessness. You stop believing that building wealth is even possible for someone like you. Think about it. You're told to save for a down payment on a house. So you save $20,000, $30,000, maybe even $50,000. But by the time you've saved that much, home prices have gone up so much that your down payment is worth less in real terms than when you started saving. You're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. This creates a psychological trap. You start thinking, what's the point? I'll never catch up. And you know what? Based on the math, you're right, if you keep playing the same game everyone else is playing. The jobs that disappeared. Let's talk about what happened to middle-class jobs, because this is the other half of the equation. Before 2008, there were millions of jobs that paid solid middle-class wages without requiring a college degree. Manufacturing, construction, middle management positions. These jobs paid $50,000 to $80,000 a year with good benefits and pensions. After 2008, companies used the recession as an excuse to permanently restructure. They automated, they outsourced, they eliminated middle management layers. They killed pension plans and replaced them with 401ks that shifted all the risk onto workers. Here's a specific statistic. In 2007, about 12.5 million Americans worked in manufacturing. By 2010, that had dropped to about 11 million. Today, still only about 12.8 million. Barely recovered after 15 years, but the population grew by 30 million people during that time. So you've got way more people competing for way fewer good jobs. And here's the thing. The jobs that did come back after 2008 were disproportionately either very high-paying jobs requiring advanced degrees or very low-paying service jobs. The middle got hollowed out. The education trap. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's why you need to go to college now, right? Get the degree, get the high-paying job. Look, this is where the system really screwed over millennials and Gen Z. The average cost of college in 2008 was about $15,000 per year for a public university. Today, over $28,000 per year, almost doubled. So you were told, the good jobs require a degree, go to college. And you did. You took on an average of $30,000 to $40,000 in student loans. Some of you have 6 figures in debt. And then you graduated into an economy where the good jobs that required that degree were paying not that much more than before, but now you had massive debt. Let me give you the math. Say you graduated in 2012 with $35,000 in student loans at 6.5% interest. Over a 10-year repayment plan, you're paying about $400 per month. That's $4,800 per year you can't save for a down payment. You can't invest in the stock market while it's quadrupling. You can't use to start a business. Meanwhile, your parents' generation, they could work a summer job and pay for college. They graduated with little to no debt. They bought houses at 25 with single incomes. You did everything you were told to do, and you still can't get ahead because the game changed and nobody bothered to update the rule book they gave you. The wealth gap explosion. Here's a statistic that should terrify you. In 1989, the top 1% of Americans owned about 30% of all wealth in the country. Today, they own over 32%. But that's not even the scary part. The top 10% of Americans now own about 67% of all wealth. The bottom 50% of Americans own just 2.5% of all wealth. Think about that. Half of America owns basically nothing, and it's getting worse every year. After 2008, we had the largest wealth transfer from the poor and middle class to the wealthy in modern history, and it happened through completely legal mechanisms: quantitative easing, asset price inflation, low interest rates that benefited borrowers with good credit and assets to borrow against, foreclosures, corporate bailouts, stock buybacks. If you owned assets, you got rich. If you didn't, you got crushed. What you can actually do about this. Now look, I know this is depressing, but here's the thing. Understanding the system is the first step to beating it. You cannot win by playing the game the way your parents did, because the rules changed. But you can win by understanding the new rules and adapting. Here's what you need to do. First, accept that wages alone will never make you wealthy in this system. The people who are building wealth today are doing it through assets, not income. You need to become an asset owner as quickly as possible, even in small amounts. If you can't afford a house, buy stocks, even $100 a month in an index fund. If you can't do that, develop skills that have asymmetric returns: coding, design, sales, content creation, skills where you can eventually own the output of your work. Second, understand that debt is a wealth transfer mechanism. Every dollar you pay in interest is a dollar someone else earns in passive income. Credit card debt at 20% interest, you're paying someone 20% per year to use your own future money. Student loans at 7%, same thing. Your absolute first priority before fancy investments, before crypto, before anything, is to eliminate high-interest debt, because you cannot build wealth while you're paying someone else 20% per year. Third, optimize for asset ownership over consumption. Here's what your parents' generation did wrong and what they're passing down to you. They optimized for looking wealthy instead of being wealthy. The big house, the new cars, the fancy vacations, all of it financed with debt. You need to flip this completely. Drive a paid-off used car, live in the cheapest place you can tolerate, skip the lifestyle inflation every time you get a raise, and use every dollar you save to buy assets. I know that sounds boring. I know it sounds like you're sacrificing your 20s and 30s, but here's the math. If you're 25 years old and you invest $500 per month in an index fund averaging 8% returns, by the time you're 45, you'll have about $300,000. By 55, over $700,000. By 65, $1.7 million. That's not including any raises, any windfalls, any increase in how much you're saving. That's just $500 per month for 40 years. But if you wait until you're 35 to start, you'll have about half that. The first 10 years matter more than the last 20 because of compound returns. Fourth, understand that the system is designed to keep you poor, so you have to actively resist it. Every credit card offer, every car loan, every subscription service, every targeted ad, it's all designed to extract money from you and transfer it to asset owners. You have to become militantly defensive with your money. Ask yourself before every purchase, is this moving me closer to asset ownership or further away? That $7 latte every morning, that's $2,555 per year. Invested at 8% for 30 years, that's over $300,000 you're giving up. I'm not saying never buy a latte. I'm saying understand what you're trading. Fifth, bet on yourself. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You probably won't get wealthy working for someone else. Not anymore. The days where you could work at the same company for 40 years and retire with a pension, those are gone. The people building wealth today are entrepreneurs, freelancers, creators, investors, people who own their own time and capture the full value of their work. This doesn't mean you need to quit your job tomorrow, but it does mean you should be spending your evenings and weekends building something: a skill, a side business, a portfolio of investments, an audience, something that you own that can compound over time. The bigger picture. Look, I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you this to make you feel hopeless. I'm telling you this because you deserve to understand why things feel so hard. It's not your fault. You didn't cause this. And anyone who tells you that millennials and Gen Z are struggling because they're lazy or entitled or buy too much avocado toast, they're either lying to you or they don't understand the data. The system changed, wealth transferred, the middle class got hollowed out. These are facts. But here's the thing. Once you understand how the system works, you can start to use it instead of being used by it. The wealthy aren't smarter than you, they're not better with money, they just understand that wealth comes from owning assets, and they've structured their lives around acquiring assets as early and as aggressively as possible. You can do the same thing. It's harder for you than it was for them because you're starting from behind, but it's not impossible. The middle class after 2008 got absolutely crushed by a system that transferred wealth upward while telling everyone the economy was recovering. But you don't have to accept that fate. Understand the game, become an asset owner, optimize for wealth over consumption, and build something that can compound over time. That's how you win. If this video helped you understand what actually happened and what you can do about it, make sure you're subscribed because I break down these financial systems. Drop a comment and let me know. What's the biggest thing holding you back from building wealth right now? I'll see you in the next one.